Welcome everyone to our webinar on Copilot for M365. This is a very hot topic right now, something a lot of people are talking about and something I'm very fascinated by personally. My name is Yoni Samuels. I'm joined by Chris Landers and Curry May from M365, and we will be running this webinar today. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask it in the chat, ask it in the Q&A, and Chris and Curry will be monitoring that, or feel free to unmute yourselves. I believe you guys have mics and you can ask yourself. We encourage participation from everyone. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So today's agenda, we're going to be talking about a little bit of like an introduction to Copilot, about Copilot. What is it? How does it work on a very high level, technical level, not getting too deep into the technicals, and what can it do? We are then going to go into some live examples of actually using Copilot, so you can kind of get a sense of, how this might apply to your organization or things that you do on a day-to-day basis, how it can increase your productivity, etc. Then we'll moving on to some of the expansions and leveraging of Copilot. Microsoft is rolling this out very aggressively, and there's a lot of new things every single day, every single week. And so some of that expansion stuff, integrating it with some of the apps that you may use and things like that, ending off with a little bit of how you can get started on your journey into Copilot and AI in general in your organization. Okay. So what is Copilot? So Copilot, as Microsoft would say, is really everything. Microsoft named everything that they're doing now Copilot. So really, it's kind of different types of Copilots. They're kind of moving from this kind of app-centric view where you have different apps that accomplish different tasks, and they're kind of trying to move that into a Copilot. They envision there being a Copilot for everything. There'll be a Copilot for your M365. There'll be a Copilot for developing GitHub, and there'll be, visualization came out recently for Fabric Copilots and things of that nature. So they are rolling out different Copilots. They want AI assistants everywhere everywhere to help you on your in any of your Microsoft apps that you may use. So today, we're really going to be focusing on Copilot for M365. So Copilot for M365 integrates with your Microsoft 365 apps. It is a combination of the large language model like ChatGPT and those kind of things that most of us are probably familiar with. Most of us have probably had some interaction with either ChatGPT or maybe Gemini from Google or any of these other chatbots called a large language model, and that's kind of like the brain behind the AI. But Copilot for M365 really integrates that along with your Microsoft Graph, which is where all of your Microsoft data lives. So assuming that you're using OneDrive and SharePoint and all the Microsoft 365 apps, all of that data lives in what's called the Microsoft Graph. And so it actually it can ground your prompts and your questions in your data. So it gives it a lot of context. And that's really the power of Copilot for M365 is it has context from your data. So again, that's something that you access from your Microsoft 365 apps, as what we're going to show in Word and PowerPoint, Outlook, things of that nature. And again, and it does also connect to the internet and can bring sources from there as well. So a brief technical overview of how Copilot for Microsoft 365 works is kind of looks like a little complicated image, but it basically takes your prompt from whichever app you're accessing it from, and it grounds it in the Microsoft Graph, which basically gives it some context, like based on your data. Then it sends that over to the large language model, which is like the ChatGPT, OpenAI brain, if you will. And then that response then again comes back and gets some additional context based on your emails, files, meetings, chats, all of that kind of stuff that lives in the graph. And then that response is finally spit back out to you as your answer that you get from the AI. One of the advantages and the differences of having Microsoft Graph integrated into Copilot M365 is the semantic index, is what they call it, which is very much similar to the way our brains work. if all of us are familiar with Google, when you search something in Google, or something called keyword search is something that we're very used to. When you look for something in Google, you're really doing a keyword search, and Google is going to spit out the results that best match your keywords, regardless of context. And so the difference with a semantic index is the same way our brains, you have associations of certain things. An example being, let's say you're looking for a sales report from June. So your brain knows, oh, I know that Bob is in charge of the sales reports, and he usually has them in an Excel file, and they're usually over here. So when you ask Copilot for the sales report from June, it also has that same context and knows where to look, and says, oh, I know to look for Bob's latest June sales report, as opposed to if maybe you were to look for that on in Google or with a keyword search, it would just spit out any file or any email or anything that has the word sales and report or June in them. And so that's kind of just a small example of the overall advantage of having your data as a context for the AI for Copilot. So now moving on to Copilot for Microsoft in action. So there's actually a brief video, and if the sound does not work, I apologize, but there's no words or anything. It's just music, so you're not missing out on much. It's a short video that kind of just shows is Microsoft showing off what they envision, I guess, Copilot doing, and most of them are actually, we're going to go through live afterwards, and I will do live examples together with you all. But this is just a brief video to kind of showcase what Copilot looks like in action. That was kind of a trailer video of what Copilot looks like in action, and a lot of it is pretty accurate. And we're going to see in just a minute. I'm going to do some live demos, but some of the things that you saw were throughout the different apps like Word and Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, Teams. They did not show off Loop, although for anyone that uses Loop, Copilot exists there as well. So a big thing that I've noticed through my using of Copilot personally is where you type and where you're requesting some of this where you type your prompts actually matters a lot. It kind of is specific to what you're trying to accomplish. So if you want to generate a PowerPoint presentation, then you want to be asking that prompt in the Copilot within PowerPoint as opposed to the one in Word. And one of the big things that if you caught in the video was, and in general, you are able to reference, and this is one of the big key things that Copilot does, you are able to reference other files and other data within your prompt. So for example, here are some of the examples that I think were in the video as well as just written out here. So you can kind of see some in PowerPoint. You can literally create a PowerPoint presentation based on a prompt or based on another file. So if you have a Word document, you can say, use this Word document as a basis, as a reference to generate a presentation. In Outlook, you can both summarize email chains. So, we all get those all of a sudden, you're just looped into this super long, complex email chain. there's a summary button, and you just say summarize this email chain, and it'll summarize it, spit that out for you. As well as when you are writing an email to someone, it can help you coach. It can coach you, and it can, generate an email content as well. Similar things for Word, Teams, and Loop. And so with that, I am going to switch here for a second, and I will go into the live demo. Pull this up. So one of the first things I want to showcase, and this is actually something that is free for anyone to use and is part of the Copilot that is built into Microsoft Edge. For those that use Edge, or maybe now will start using Edge, Copilot exists in there as well. And let me share this screen. Let me know if you can see that okay. All right. So this is your Microsoft Edge browser. If you look in the top right corner here, you can open up Copilot. This is the Copilot logo over here in the corner. It also exists right here on the search bar. And this is kind of like your Chat GPT, and actually is the same model as OpenAI Azure, same owned by Microsoft. So, and it gives you some options here. You can type a prompt and ask for something. So one of the cool things that I wanted to show off in this one, and we might even do a deeper dive into something like this later on in April, is something image generation. Copilot is able to utilize, it is DALL-E 3 is the name of the model. It's, again, the OpenAI image creation model. And you are able to actually access that using Copilot right here in Edge. And so, for example, let's have this prompt that I tried out earlier, and we can watch it create an image. And this is always fun for, let's say, you can use it for work, and you can also use it for, if you have, friends and you're talking about a certain topic, you can create some very relevant, funny images very fast. So here I'm asking it to generate an image of a superhero computer technician saving the day. Something kind of random, but something that maybe you can use for if you're putting out content, like a LinkedIn post or something like that. And so you can see, here it is. It'll take about 10, 20 seconds or so, and it'll spit out some images. And here we go. If we can actually open these up a little bigger so you can actually see. We got some different options. And then you can also, it's a conversation with Copilot. So it's not just a one-off prompt. You can, you can see here, it actually, gives you some options that you can edit it. You could say, can you make it more colorful? Can you add some villains? Can you make, make superhero a woman, whatever it is. Here's some of the fun examples, and there's a lot of fun that you can have with this. It's something we might do a little bit of a deeper dive into a little bit later. Another cool feature in the Copilot in Edge that I wanted to show off was, if you see up here, there's a compose feature, which actually lets you kind of tune your response. So this is where you're going to write your prompt, but then you can choose a tone. You can make it professional, enthusiastic. You can make it funny. You could choose what kind of format. You can actually, LinkedIn post is actually an option here. You can, if you want to generate a LinkedIn post specifically, or an email, a report, and then you could choose a length. You want it to be shorter, medium, long. And this kind of just gives you some more customizable options in terms of your prompts. So that was a brief thing I wanted to show off. So now moving on to Copilot for M365, which does require the Copilot M365 license. So here is an example I wanted to show off. This is a short little, really just a bunch of bullets on Mavenspire's Smart as a Service Intunes management, right? It's one of our services that we offer. And it's kind of just a short, I wouldn't even call it a one pager. It's more of like just some bullets about what it is and what it does. So let's say I wanted to create a little bit of a more fleshed out document from this. So I'm going to actually open, already have open, a new document. So when you, and I'm doing it here in the web, but it works the same way on the desktop apps as well. I just wanted to mention that. So you can click here to draft Copilot. So when you open a new Word document with Copilot, it'll usually show up like this, and you can just ask it to draft something. But So what I'm going to ask it to do is, give me 1 second, grab my prompts that I made sure work, and this is actually the exact prompt that was used in that video that we saw. So we're going to draft a product announcement, is really a service announcement, based on, and so this is one of the cool things I was talking about where you can reference your content. And so there are different ways of referencing the content. You can click on this, you can type a slash, and it'll bring up a little prompt for you to select what document you want to base it off of. But the easiest and the fastest way I found is actually you can just type or copy, you can type the name of the document. So in this case, the name of this document is a Smart as a Service Intune Managed Services short overview .docs, because it is a Word document. You can just paste that in there, and it'll actually, assuming that it's in OneDrive, it'll find that document and it'll be able to read it. So I'm asking it to, based off of this document, draft a product announcement. And so you can go ahead and generate that. There it goes. There you go. It just spat out. It's kind of a little more fine-tuned document. And so it gives you options here. You can always you can edit it. You can give it some fine-tuning to do, and you can choose to keep it. You can discard it. You can have it try again. So let's keep this. And there you go. In matters of seconds, really, we've turned this into this. I hope you all can see that. It might be a little small. I forgot to zoom in. And again, with all these things that are AI generated, you always want to read it over and make sure that it is actually accurate, because inevitably sometimes it will make stuff up. And so you do want to make sure that it is accurate and nothing gets in there that is not supposed to be. So now, taking this a step further, we can now take this document that I just created and it named for me, and I am going to copy a link to it. Now you'll see why in a second. That's fine. Okay. So now let's say I wanted to create a presentation based on this newly generated document I just made with Copilot. I would open up PowerPoint. I would go into Copilot here. This is a little Copilot logo up here. And so again, it matters where you're typing this. If I were to try to ask this in Word, it would say, I can't do that. You can't generate a PowerPoint from Word. So I'm going to ask it to create let's call it a 10-slide presentation. You can technically ask it for as many as you would like. From the announcement. That's what we're going to do. And this is also one that was actually in the video. And I'm going to paste that link that I copied to the Word document. Now, the reason I did that is, for some reason, if I were to try to just type the name of the document like I did before, it doesn't like that. So I'm actually pasting is a SharePoint link, and it can actually do it that way. You can do a link to the document, and that tends to work better, specifically in PowerPoint. And so we are now going to generate that. So I asked it to create a 10-slide presentation from the announcement, and then I pasted a link to this document right here. And I will note that if you have, Maven Inspire, we do have like our preset themes and stuff. So if you actually open a new presentation with your theme, it will continue that theme throughout the generated content. I did not do that here, so it's going to be a little more plain probably. And so as it's going, it's telling you all the slides and all the kind of an overview of what it's generating. Give it a minute here. It's almost there. Probably could ask it to do 5 slides. It would have gone a little faster. And there you go. Again, there's no, it picked its own theme. But this is, it drafted 9 slides, decided it didn't want to do 10. So this is all stuff that it pulled from that document. I'll scroll through this really quickly just so you can see. Picked all the images it picked on its own. You know, and while I wouldn't just say you just send this off without any review, you definitely want to probably fine tune it yourself. But this is a pretty good way to get a head start on some of this stuff. And you'll actually notice it actually creates speaker notes as well. Pretty much just, I think, based on this document. And so in the matter of, 5 minutes or so, we took this short bulleted kind of explanation of a service and drafted a 10-slide presentation on it. So that's really, really cool. That's an example of what you can do in PowerPoint. And the other thing, so this is kind of showing generation, creating of things. Copilot can do the opposite, or I don't know if you can call it the opposite, but it can summarize things. So if, let's say you had a document here and I wanted to summarize it, I would open up Copilot and I can just ask it to summarize this doc and it'll spit out a summary. So that's, for this document, it's pretty short. So, but if you have some long, report or anything like that, and you just want the summary or the key points, highlight the key points, those are some of the prompts that you can try within Word, and it works also in PowerPoint. You can have it summarize a deck and stuff like that. So here you go. Here's this little summary of this document. And then you can always copy this, paste it somewhere else, stuff like that. Moving on, I wanted to let's show some Outlook examples. Let me just make sure before I slide this over. Yeah, so I created a fake email chain for this. This is not any real, that's the data. So let's say I have this email chain, which is, I don't know what it is. Let's say I got looped into it just now. So you'll see right here on the top, it gives me the option Summary by Copilot. So I can go ahead and click that. Oh, and I've already summarized this before, so it spat it out instantly, but it would take, about 10 to 20 seconds. And here you go. It summarized this email chain. Someone reached out, wanted to learn about some of the services. So we provided them with some of the stuff that we do. They expressed interest, we provided an outline. Great, confirmed the interest, you want to schedule a meeting. So then let's say I want to then reply to this email, this chain. I can go in here and hit the Copilot button, and we'll do draft with Copilot. I'll show you what coaching is in a second. And let's say we want to I want to draft a response stating how we're looking forward to our meeting. And again, in here, you can reference in anywhere in Copilot, you can reference other documents. So if you wanted to reference, I said in this email chain, we sent the 2-pager on the cyber risk scan. So, you can always reference that and say, highlight these points. You can always reference other files and other emails and anything else like that within all of your prompts. So let's go ahead and generate a draft email. Well, there you go. Live demo part 1 does not like that. Sometimes it just says no. So I'm going to give it a couple more tweaks to see if it works. If I can get it to spit out a response. Okay. So let's say, for now, this isn't working, but let's say I started drafting my own response. Right. Now there's also the option, hopefully it'll work. I can do coaching by Copilot, which is where it'll read, it has to be at least 100 characters. I apologize, I did not test this out beforehand. Maybe this will work now. I apologize for some of the live demo stuff. You can never see how it goes. well, all right, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but the idea is if you're drafting an email, maybe it's a little longer than a few words. Coaching by Copilot will read your email and it'll give you suggestions like this sounds a little too direct, or this could be said a little nicer, or something like that. Real examples of suggestions I've got. So let's move on to another big one, which for some of the demos I'm not going to be able to do live in terms of Teams because I don't want to have my Teams out there, but I will show as an example. So I opened up here, drag this in. This is just the M365 app. And you can go ahead and there's a Copilot here. This is like kind of a little bit of a central Copilot chat. So if you kind of just want to get some information from anywhere within your M365 environment, this is kind of where I would go. But what I'm going to ask it to do is I'm going to ask it to prepare me, and this is one of the things we saw in the video as well. Here we go. Prepare me for my upcoming 1:15 meeting. And this is a meeting that I purposely scheduled for this demo purpose. So hopefully it doesn't find anything else coming at 1:15 since then. So you can see it's looking through all the meetings, emails, things like that. And it's generating a bit slow, but so I can see at 1:15, I have a meeting called Discuss Upcoming Broadcom and VMware Webinar. It's scheduled at 1:15. I organized it with Curry and Chris. The objective is to discuss what we want to cover in the upcoming webinar about the recent changes to VMware. And then it gives me some suggestions of things maybe I should look at. I should look at maybe this email from Curry or this email chain with Curry and Chris on it as well. And so that's some very useful information if you're jumping into a meeting late. There are also some functionalities in there that I'm not going to show live, but I will mention in terms of Teams that we use all the time, which is number one, a recap of the meeting. So if assuming you enable transcription, because that's how it is able to read what's going on, you can at the end of the meeting generate a recap, and it'll recap all the main points. You can list some action items, and it'll list out action items of the meeting. You can also, if you join a meeting late, it'll give you the option. It'll pop up and say, catch me up on this meeting. And you can go ahead and click that, and it'll summarize what's been talked about so far, or maybe where you've been mentioned and stuff like that. I think those were all the examples I had prepared. Again, there's a lot of cool functionality stuff, and there's a lot to play with Copilot in general. And so this is kind of just to give you a taste of some of the main ways that it would be used, but you can definitely think about how in your organization it might be used and how it could be useful for you. So I'm going to switch over back to the presentation now for a minute. Again, I encourage if everyone has any questions or comments, please feel free to jump in. I can present this back up there. We'll jump back to where we were. Okay. Now I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the basics of prompting, because prompting is a little bit of an art form. It's a little bit of like it takes a little bit to get used to. And there are some just general kind of, I guess, rules that you could say of how you should go about prompting, because how you ask the question makes all the difference in the world in terms of the quality of results that you get. So prompting in general should be made up of 4 parts. There's starting with the goal. What are you trying to do? Are you creating something? Are you summarizing something? Are you editing something? That's where you should start out. So in this example, if you can see it, it's big enough. I want to generate in this example. I'm generating, and be specific as well. It's a very important point. 3 to 5 bullet points. You'll remember when I did the PowerPoint, I specified how many slides I wanted. You don't have to, but again, the more specific that you are, the better results you are going to get. So I want to generate 3 to 5 bullet points and then give it context. Why do you need this? To prepare me for this meeting. And again, this is it's honestly the same way you would ask a coworker or a friend for help. It's kind of the same way that you would word it to the AI. I need this for this reason, and then a source, which is again where you can tell it where you want it to pull context from. So based on a certain email or based on a certain document, and then the expectations. Do you want it to be simple language? I can get up to speed quickly. And so it takes some getting used to and some adjusting, and you have to play with it in order to really start to get a hang of how to prompt effectively. But these are just some good tips to keep in mind, as well as some additional tips here, which is knowing the limitations of Copilot, understanding what it is and is not capable of doing. Using punctuation is helpful. Being professional and using, communicating clearly and nice language does actually help get better results. And a big thing to keep in mind as well is it's an ongoing conversation. And so, if your first prompt doesn't quite get you where you want, you don't have to start over. You can say, okay, well, I meant maybe more like this, or please, try this, or it's an ongoing chat back and forth. And the same goes for if you're starting a new topic. If you've been chatting with it and now you want to start something else, start a new chat. And that way it'll kind of clear and it can start over on a new task instead of trying to do it all in one chat. Those are just some brief prompting tricks, tips and stuff like that. And then I did want to show, so there's something actually built into to Copilot. Microsoft calls it Copilot Labs, which is actually kind of gives you a little bit of like a head start in terms of some prompting. As I'm sure you've maybe seen as I've been going through these demos, anytime I open a new Copilot window, it kind of gives you some options like, hey, do you want to try this? Do you want to try this? But Copilot Labs is kind of like a prompting workshop, if you will. And I will actually briefly, I apologize for the stopping and starting of sharing, but I will show that and how to get there. Not that it's super difficult to get to. But going back here to my M365 app, my chat over here. So if you look down here, it gives you some options. This is still based on, I can go to a new chat. So when I look at a new chat, it gives you a few bubbles here of, some things to try. But if you go down here to view prompts, again, it gives you some more options, but then you can actually go to see all prompts in Copilot Lab, which I forgot to leave open before this, so it's going to have to open in a second. There we go. And so here it kind of gives you a little bit of like a workspace, and you can say, I'm trying to use Word, and what kind of things do you want to do in Word? Do you want to create? Do you want to understand? Do you want to edit? And it'll say, so if I want to understand a document in Word, it gives you some prompts to try. Explain this document in 3 sentences. Summarize this document in 3 key points, right? It just gives you examples. Let's say, looking in Teams, you can multi-select, want to catch up. And again, it just kind of just helps you get started on some prompting with some prefab ones here. That was just a brief thing I wanted to share. Going back now, can I apologize for the back and forth? I'm going to have to share again anyway, so I'm going to stay out of the presentation and just let you know that we're starting the next section, which is expanding and leveraging Copilot. So this is all works really well when all of your data and you are a big Microsoft user, right? All of your data you're using OnePoint, you're using SharePoint, you're using all these apps. But some people aren't necessarily doing that, or they have other apps, their data lives elsewhere. And so Microsoft has released and is releasing different plugins and different ways to kind of expand Copilot beyond. So let me share this. There's something called Copilot Studio, which is where, and I'm not going to go too deep into this because it gets a little technical and I don't want to get too bogged down in it, but it's just a kind of a cool way that you can kind of leverage Copilot for yourself. And so I've already you can see here, Copilot Studio. I've created a Copilot and it's got different plugins, prompts, and models. There's a lot to play with here, and we're not really going to dive into it now, maybe on a future webinar. But I've created a little Copilot here, and basically what it means that I've created one is I've given it certain sets of data. And you can look here at the generative AI section. I've actually put in our Mavenspire website as a data source. So you can upload your own data sources, and it'll basically create like a mini Copilot that only has access to those sources. So this is a little Copilot chat here that has access to the Mavenspire website. And so if I were to ask it, what services does Mavenspire offer, assuming that we get some good live demo luck here, because this is the only data source it has. Okay, well, let's see if I can refresh it, because sometimes it's a little finicky. But you can add SharePoint sites, you can add public websites, you can even upload documents to the kind of like the back end, if you will, of this Copilot, and get it to. So let me try it one more time. If it doesn't work, we'll leave it. Okay, I'm seeming out of luck today with some of this stuff. So, but it basically has that. It will pull from the Mavenspire website, and it'll just give you, and it'll show you where exactly on the website it pulled its answer from. Unfortunately, it's not working for me today. So now I will go back to the presentation. We can finish this up. Alrighty. So again, this is something that you're welcome to try to explore on your own. Copilot Studio, and they're constantly releasing and updating some of the stuff. But some of the other things I want to mention that like I said, they're coming out with new things seemingly every day, for sure every week. You'll notice I actually left out Excel from the live demo, and that is because it's still kind of in a preview mode, where a lot of the functionality is not quite what we saw like in that video. It requires some very specific prerequisites for it to work exactly that way, but they are slowly rolling out those features as we speak. There's something called Copilot for Finance, which I learned about actually just this past week. Again, this is also in preview mode, and this is actually something you can go check out yourself. It's free preview of Copilot for Finance. There's something called Copilot for Sales, which integrates with CRMs. And so there's a lot of different, like I said, Microsoft is really trying to release a Copilot for everything. So no matter what kind of data and what kind of stuff you're doing, they're creating Copilots for it. And so learning how to leverage it is definitely something that is worth looking into. So getting started and implementing and adopting Copilot, this is something that we at Mavenspire are more than capable and happy to help with. Just some of the basics that Microsoft talks about and that we feel also are very important is it's not just turning on a license and throwing it out there and saying, all right, let's see what it does. It requires a lot of some steps beforehand. For example, you need to make sure you're ready to implement before you even turn something like this on. You want to be ready, and what that means is stuff like data governance and file permissions and things like that, because Copilot operates on the same permission level as the user that it is licensed for. So for example, my Copilot only has access to the files and to the data that I have access to within my organization, which is great, assuming that my permissions are set up correctly. However, if you have users that maybe transition from one role to another, and so they're not supposed to really have access to that old stuff, but maybe they still do, it's important to get that straightened out before implementing something like Copilot, because Copilot is going to access whatever it can based on those permissions. And so stuff like data governance, data loss prevention, file permissions, things like that are very important in terms of getting your organization ready. And then actual adoption of Copilot is something, you want to understand what are your actual gaps in your organization. One of the big things that apparently like 80% of people talk about is just not knowing where to find information. And so that's something that Copilot can definitely help with, is like, it can search through OneDrive, it can search through SharePoint in terms of accessibility to data. But again, that goes back to the readiness. You want to make sure that those data governance policies are set before you implement such a thing. and you move on toward adoption. You want to find users that are going to be, champions of it, that are going to push it forward if that's something you're going to try to adopt. And then the impact, you definitely want to study the impact of, has it helped your organization? Has it hurt your organization? Make sure you're monitoring that. And these are all things that we would love to be able to help with. You could totally reach out to us, myself, to Chris, to Curry, whoever, to talk about this more in depth. Anything that you saw here, anything you have questions about, we would be more than happy to talk about more in depth. That brings us to the end of the presentation. I would like to leave a little time now if people would have any questions, comments, things like that. We would love to hear, and I would love to try to answer any of your questions that you may have. I thank you all for attending. We have, is there anything in the Q&A or in the chat? If you don't feel like unmuting yourself, that's totally fine as well.
We do have a thank you in the chat. Great presentation, Yoni. I think too, and just kind of sharing some further examples of this. We here in Mavenspire are starting to use this daily, just in our day-to-day interactions and our jobs. One of the things that I'm finding extremely helpful is actually Teams meetings or webinars such as this. Obviously, we have a lot of meetings, whether they be internal meetings or meetings with our customers, where Copilot can literally function as if you've got an executive assistant sitting there taking detailed notes, keeping track of action items, assigning those action items. It's pretty impressive. Just as a little bit of a testimonial, it has come in very handy for me over the past, 3 weeks now that I've really been adopting it, maybe 4 weeks, where it comes in really handy at the end, where it's like, when you're in a meeting, you're in a conversation, sometimes it can be a little distracting trying to jot down notes, whether you're typing them or writing them down on a piece of paper. It's nice to just be hands-free, not worrying about that, and know that Copilot is keeping track of all the topics that are going on. It's actually notating action items. You can actually double click down into an action item and have it zoom in to the part of the transcript, so that if you want to actually go back and read the full conversation. So that's something I would say, more than anything, just for me as a user, has become extremely useful in my day-to-day job.
Yeah, it's something that I would say in Teams is used a lot, like every single day, and I use it every single day throughout my workday. Generating content, things of that nature. It's been fun to experiment with, and it's changing every day, and I love that. I love the new things that come up and trying them out. That really keeps me entertained and keeps me focused on some of the stuff. All right, if there are no other questions or anything like that, I think we can wrap it up. Thank you all very much for attending. We appreciate you taking the time to listen to us